for attending, and
here we go. We are live.
Coming to you live is the Auto Hub Show, changing automotive one show at a time with Ian and Jeff. And here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls, adding up to a ton of missed service opportunity and increased customer churn. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue simply from missing calls. So who will pick up? Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. Hiring Brooke means absolutely no call goes unanswered, boosting your customer satisfaction and reducing your overhead costs. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend with human-level understanding and a friendly conversational voice. Her conversational intelligence is built on millions of actual service industry conversations, making her the easiest onboard you'll ever have. She can handle any volume of calls and follows your policies every step of the way, 24/7. That means even when the lights are off, Brooke is always on.
And I can do it without missing a beat.
You really do check all the boxes. Book with Brooke today. Visit Brooke.ai or call 866-942-1236. Finally, the perfect match.
See that light above the bathroom door over there? That's a big time saver for our technicians and other recon staff. The light goes on when the bathroom is occupied. Now techs keep working until the light goes out. Then they know for sure the room is empty. And when they're busy there, they're also catching up on the news. Not bad news, but news they need for the job. I post these where they can't be missed. Too often, the search for the right product brings valuable time. This inexpensive detailer's cart organizes supplies. Now techs lay their hands on what they need without delay. We got these time savers from Rapid Recon, the reconditioning software company that's always defining better reconditioning solutions for dealerships like yours. When the goal is to get cars through recon in 72 hours or less, every step, every minute, every better decision made helps towards that goal. For more recon efficiency ideas like these, talk to the recon experts at rapidrecon.com.
And good morning. A special thank you to all our sponsors, as always. And of course, Jeff, I know that Brooke.ai, I hope, is going to be on a show live soon. So just to keep you up firm. So a few book recommendations. Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly, and The Exponential Age by Azim Azar. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good morning, afternoon, wherever you're joining us from, and after the fact, whatever time it is, we appreciate you being with us. And before we get started, we always talk about our little disclaimer, which is the opinion of those shared by our guests here today, are that of them, not necessarily of the Auto Hub Show or Ian and Jeff, although many times we actually do agree with it. So, Ian.
Yep. And the show today is how to attract more customers with digital technology. So let's get into it. 1 second. Move this over here.
Got to get rid of those Porsches, man.
Yeah, there we go.
Just makes everybody all
there we go. I'll change it to
jealous.
something else. Here
So joining us today, we have a great group of people today, and what we like to is that many people are new to each other, and we're very proud of the fact that we introduce a lot of people to each other in the automotive industry and beyond. Joining us today is an old friend of the show. I'm not saying he's old; he's very young, but is Matthew Grodden, who is everything at Google Canada, or maybe Google. Joining us from the Toronto area. Matt, say hi. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Jeff, you always make it sound much grander than it is. Yes, my name is Matthew. I do work at Google Canada. My business is really questions, right? People either asking me questions and me getting those answers, or me teaching people about how to make really good use of Google's tools, which are all very question and answer query based as well. So, and along the way, I learn a lot myself, and then I try and share that with folk like yourselves and with dealers and OEMs as well. So.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Joining us from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, is Monica Aurora Beer from Digital Monk, which is one of my other favorite names of companies out there. And thanks again for being with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself again, and connection to, of course, digital attraction of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at Digital Monk Marketing, we help dealers figure out a digital strategy to do exactly that: attract more customers, get more retention, and really have a proper footprint on social platforms.
Terrific, thank you. And Jason Berry is here from a little town called New York, well, Long Island, I found out. And he is the vice president of probably everything at Digital Airstrike, one of my favorite companies. The people I've been lucky enough to meet in person. And hi, Jason.
Hello, how are you?
The company. I'm great.
Great, good to see everybody from across the great land of Canada, great land of the United States. Got a little international flair here. So thanks for the introduction. And Digital Airstrike, we're very much focused on the customer experience and partnering with dealers using technology to deliver a better customer experience through a lot of different facets of the business. So looking forward to a great conversation here. Appreciate it.
Fantastic, thank you. We also have April Simmons from Horn Auto Group in Chandler, Arizona, which is like somewhere I'm not really sure of. I actually looked on the map today, and as I zoomed out, I still couldn't find any good point of reference for everybody. But thanks for joining us. She's with Horn Auto Group. Say hi and just a little bit about yourself, please.
This is my 25th year in retail automotive. I work for a group with 13 locations sprinkled throughout Arizona. We're primarily here in Phoenix, so just outside of the metro area. Just excited to be here today and hear what other people have to say. I have my own opinions, being kind of boots on the ground, so I always like to kind of spitball the problems that other people don't necessarily see from the vendor side, and it's always a good time. So appreciate being here.
Terrific. I think talking to us from Arizona in the summer, it should be called melting Arizona.
It is.
And then we have a good friend too, Brooke Furness from BZ Consultants, BZ to us Canadians, in Chicago. Brooke is quite the internet personality now and a lot of fun to be with. Say hi, Brooke, and tell us just a tiny bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's always a joy to come on any of your shows. Absolutely love what all you're doing. So yes, I'm with BZ or B, whatever you want to call it. I'll answer. It's all good. So it doesn't matter. And so we reside to inspect what should be expected of other vendors and business partners, because there's a big difference, and just hold them accountable. And that's what I do. And then obviously, like you said, I seem to be on a lot of podcasts, and I love every bit of it. And then am the host of Facts Not Feelings. And yeah, that's what I do. So there you go. Keep it short and sweet.
And by the way, she is a major sneaker aficionado, or those Canadians runners. And last but far from least, we have Waylon Myers from Market Page, new person to the show. Waylon, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it. And you're from Chicago, not Chicago, oh my God, San Diego, a little bit far away. But Waylon, say hi, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks a lot for having me, you guys. Really appreciate it. It's nice to meet everybody here on the call, too. So I've been in the organic search optimization business for about 15 years now, primarily working with enterprise companies like Expedia, Advanced Auto Parts, big companies like that to grow their organic search traffic. In the last couple of years, I've been working with dealerships to really turn some of that knowledge and know-how into how to bring a lot more traffic online to those dealerships who are competing in a pretty tough market these days.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's for darn sure. Thank you all for being here. It's going to be a very active show, and as you've seen already, we're going to step over each other a little bit, and the fine world of digital is good that way. But you can always wave, so we'll cut you in. Ian.
Just in case you missed the video at the top of the show, I put the link in the chat bar there. And if you have questions, you can ask on video if you're comfortable, or ask in the chat, and Jeff and I will be happy to do it. So let's get into it. At the last count, there are only 102,312, etc., digital solutions available for dealers to attract customers. And all of you are experts on the side of the business. How can a dealer, a marketing manager, higher up CEO, or whoever figure out how to whittle this down to a manageable, 30, 40, and do a deeper dive and see which way to go? So let's start with April Simmons, since she works at a dealership.
Okay, that's actually a really great question. I get hit up. They say I'm the most called person in the entire organization. So my girls probably field 200 calls a day of people trying to call me to show me their solution. So it is really, really a difficult spot. I think dealers have to be proactive in their approach to find solutions. And the first thing they need to do is find their problems. So, get the whole entire staff together, from your receptionist to your service department, to your office, to your retail department, get everybody together and really figure out what your lowest hanging fruit of problems are. And then start to say, okay, reach out to people, whether it be podcasts or LinkedIn or other places, and say, what is other people using in those areas? Whittle it down that way, get it down to 3, 4, 5 solutions that you think should help you, and then set up appointments. And make sure when you set up those appointments that you have dedicated time to actually have the conversations. I see a lot of times people set up appointments and then, they don't give them but 30 seconds to try to give them like an elevator pitch. And I'm guilty of that sometimes too. We have very limited time, but ultimately you're not going to find out if it's the right solution for you if you don't dedicate the time to hear what they have to say.
Great point there. Jason, what's your opinion? I mean, you talk to dealers all the time. What do you think?
Yeah, great point. And April, I appreciate the perspective. And I've worked for very large technology vendors. I worked for startups. I've worked at the retail level as well. And I love what you said about, you have to be somewhat introspective at the dealership to identify what truly are those problems, and not chase the shiny object of, oh my goodness, there's a new widget that can do this on my website, and I'm seeing my 3 competitors have that. I need to get that now, right? And to be introspective, to be able to identify that challenge and that problem first and foremost, and to develop a solution around. And technology is just part of the solution. Very rarely do I talk to a dealer and say, here's a technology, Godspeed and have fun. It's a matter of incorporating technology, into the day-to-day lives and the culture of your organization and approaching. So, sometimes the question isn't necessarily, we're not selling oranges or toaster ovens here. We're selling a $45,000 piece of machinery that, we know the value to an average consumer. It's a matter of using facts, identifying those challenges, and putting the right pieces together. So April, I just wanted to build upon that point that you stated. So thank you.
Cool.
Well, and then making sure that it actually will work within the process of your store. I mean, that's the other side to it, is you can have conflicting widgets or conflicting technology that goes against your current process. So that means that before you go plugging in technology, you got to look at, do I need to change my process first? So that's the other side to it too. Appreciate that.
Brooke, I mean, obviously you deal a lot with technology and dealers. What do you think?
Yeah, and I fortunately, as I've worked on both sides, I've worked in the dealership, I've worked as a consultant, I've been blessed to work in multiple facets. And so, April, being on the side where you get 300 phone calls a day, plus the 300 emails a day, and you don't have time as the digital marketer, director, or whatever title they want to throw on you, honestly, I'm just gonna be blunt here. It's a load of crap because your title is nothing because you wear so many freaking hats. So having someone that can come in and say, whether it's April or our company does it the same thing, but it's the going in and saying, okay, do you even need this? So before you go to a 20 group and think, oh, I saw this in the latest 20 group, so we have to have it. Well, no, you don't. Work backwards and say, okay, is it even broken? Do we even need this? And then, okay, if you do, work backwards. Is it a button we need to fix? What's the process? And then make it fit, have the process first and then work up from there. And then going through, and like April said, and so it's everyone else has said thus far, is that, okay, where is this going into the process? Verifying this is, and if you don't know, there are so many intelligent people in our industry saying, okay, how does this work for you? How does this work for you? But don't just going back to our industry is filled with so many people throwing money to try to fix a process. No, that's not going to fix the issue. The process, product, and people, what's the issue here? So you get these things and throw money at it, it's not going to fix it. So if it is in fact, okay, we have a CRM that's, I'm not going to throw any names out here, but we have a really bad CRM, or we have a trading tool that's not working. Okay, then go back and look and say, okay, let's really vet out the issues here. Okay, now we found something. And being on both sides of it, to like what April said is, do I have the time to really sit down and talk with this person? Okay, if I don't, then let's not go with it. Do I have all the parties involved that are going to be the decision makers? So it really does take some time to go through it. Once you really do need to fix an issue, not just throw money at a problem because, oh, this is going to fix it. No, that's not going to fix it. So there are so many things that go into figuring out what is going to work and then going to work and doing it and then having a plan once it goes into going into it and then making sure all parties, because if it involves, let's say, a digital retailing tool, which that's a freaking buzzword, but you've got to have F&I involved, you got to have BDC involved, you probably have to have service involved at some point. Like every single player needs to be involved. So really thinking it through and having a game plan to say, how are we going to make this work?
Great. Let's throw man into this. Matthew, the answer man. What do you think?
Well, it's not what I necessarily. I think this question, when you're talking about how do you attract more customers, how do you get more folk on your web properties into your dealership, you probably have the answer already. You're just not looking at it. That's so often the case. And a big chunk of the answer, in my opinion, is sitting right there in Google Analytics. You can just pop in Google Analytics. You can see the channels that are driving the visits to your website, which are those customers who show up later or who might be on their way already on their mobile device. And you can then very quickly deduce, are these channels things we need to optimize to get more from? Are they the ones leading to more conversions and leads? Are people actually, engaging with our web property, actually calling the dealership? Or are they not? And that gives you a real target list of, let's focus on these channels. Let's ignore these channels. This channel is absent, so maybe we need to spend some time there. The other way I think about this, or the other way that's often helpful for me to discuss this, is I'm sure you all know, like David Kane. David Kane has a real elegant way to talk about this. He talks about something called the Marketing Bullseye, and he just has kind of 3 concentric circles that highlight what are the things you're supposed to focus on first. And that's in the center of the bullseye, and that starts with your website. It starts with your organic and paid search strategy, and then your reputation management, your social profiles, your Google My Business or Google Business Profile. We changed the name of it, we dropped the my, and then marketplaces. And so it's a really elegant way that I think paints a real clear picture of like, start here, and once you have that digital house in order at the center of the bullseye, then you can start to move out, right? Or as you get to a point where you feel like you optimize that channel, you're already getting all of the both virtual and real in-person foot traffic out of those channels, then you can look to expand into other areas, right? So I think the part of the answer is the answer is within you. You already have the answer in probably the analytics you already have. You're just not looking at it, or you're not giving it that perspective. And that set of answers around sessions and conversions you're already getting will lead you to, okay, again, which ones do we want to optimize to get more out of? Which ones do we need to actually just start playing in? Where do we need to start?
Fantastic. Monica, what do you think?
I think everyone here that's already talked about it has nailed it on the head. I think to Brooke's point, I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but even to Brooke's point, really having an understanding of what the real problem is, going back and understanding what vendors could potentially fix that issue. Again, reiterating what the ladies have said here is that a lot of times dealers don't even understand what the problem is. They know what the end result, the problem as its end result is, and they don't understand everything leading to that problem. So I think when you go back, really figure out the process that you're having issues with, looking at the analytics there, and then working backwards. It's almost like reverse engineering it.
Fantastic. Waylon, last but not least, what do you think? You're muted, just so you know. There you go.
I know. I gotcha. Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody's been saying so far. I mean, I think that once you've identified this is my area of problem, is it a digital issue? Is it a staff issue? Is it a process issue? You can push into that and say, all right, well, what are those solutions out there for me? And as Matt was saying, Google Analytics is a great place to look for those opportunities if you know how. But there's a lot of things to learn about looking at what's going on in your digital life and what's happening through your website. And I talked to lots of different dealers who don't understand the whole process that a person takes from a search all the way to a sale. And there's so many steps in between that. So one of the things you'd want to do is make sure that if you do pick a solution, that you have some way to figure out all the way down the line how you're going to make that new thing that you just signed up for really work all the way to the sale, right? If you can only get part way and you can't track it after that, it's a little tough to know whether or not you were successful. So you want to pick stuff that you can really measure, that you know that you can say, yep, that was successful. Otherwise, you're never sure, and it kind of becomes a dead end, and then you're reporting to the management team or whatever, and you're like, I'm not sure if it worked, but I think it did. Nobody wants to be in that position. So anything you can really, you can choose that can really, you can push into and understand from A to Z, how does this work? How's it going to get me from the visitor to a sale is important.
Thanks very much. Jeff?
Well, it's a very good point you're making, Will. I'm going to call you in the next question here right away, but I recently experienced something personally about digital solutions with a dealership. I had a problem with my car. I was in an area that I didn't know anybody to send it to. Looked up the dealer, who's a long established dealer, big dealer, like we're talking a $40 million building. And I Googled them. I got that, Matt, Googled. My phone doesn't like me now. And up pops all their stuff. So I clicked here, opened up something. There's no phone number. Make an appointment at service. Click there. You got an appointment in 6 weeks. And then I called them. And then I got a digital answering system. And it wasn't even recording. It was, we love you, we hug you, we this, we that, everything. Still couldn't get through there. Finally, I found a backdoor and searched some more, found a number, called that. It turns out it's service. I then had to ask for, it was sales. Then I had to ask for service through sales. I finally got there, great person, got the car shipped, towed the car there, and I get a text from them. Thank you, please ask us questions here. Well, I did. Didn't get a response. so on and so on and so on. I finally had to find ways around. So the fact is the next question is at all these shows, Dealer 20 groups, Brooke, as you mentioned, you go there and you walk around and there's these incredible booths and these wonderful things in their swag. I got here's one of my favorite pieces of swag, and this is wonderful, and I'll take it home and I'll throw it on my desk. And if I'm I don't know, somebody from the C-suite or I'm a dealer principal, I buy it because it's fun. And oh my God, I met Vanilla Ice. So this was great. So I'm going to sign up for this stuff. And it's overwhelming. And, the fact is when you go there, Waylon, because we kept you on hold for so long, is there actually anything new? And, is there something they can get their teeth into to actually make it work? Are we just rejigging old things? And are we just setting ourselves up for failure because we just don't know how to use them?
That's a really interesting question. I can't speak to all areas of digital marketing, right? I'm particularly focused on certain parts of digital marketing. But I can say I've not seen a whole lot new in digital marketing in a long time. There are people that push in on one niche part of it, and then somebody else does another niche piece, and another person does another niche piece, whether it's like, automated telephone service systems, or it's a, newfangled thing on your website. But I think you made a really important point. There's so much out there. If you are not aware of all that you are doing, you can create a digital barrier to people getting to you. Like it's noise. You have so much junk and clutter. The pathway isn't clear and simple. Like you want to be able to get someone who's on Google searching for, I want a 2020 Ford F-150 or whatever it is. You want to get them to a salesperson as quickly as possible. So run your own path, go do it, and then see what happens, right? Go do it, see if there is a phone number, if it's a single click, if it's 5 clicks, if it's 10 clicks, if it's a dead end or a dead web page. Figure it out, because there's a lot of things out there that are new and fancy, but simpler, I think, is better. Like, make sure that it all works first. Make sure every simple path that any normal person would need to get to you digitally works. If they start at Facebook, how do they get to you? If they start on Google, how do they get to you? If they paid an ad over here on some website, are they getting to you? Make sure that's really a direct line from customer to salesperson as quickly as possible, or service person, as it may be.
Yeah, I think, Matt, you have your hand up. I'd love to add on to Waylon's point, but Matt, why don't you go first?
Yeah.
You were my next choice, Matt, anyway.
There you
go. Perfect. There's so much. I think we need an Auto Hub day just to talk about this particular topic. Like, there's too much to talk about in this particular case. But I have so many things I want to say in probably no time, and I want to let other people speak too. But I think you've heard me say, or maybe even seen in some of my other presentations, that again, one of the questions I get asked a lot, which I think is kind of a silly question, is if you could tell dealers anything, right? If you could tell them anything today, what would you tell them? Just one thing, and then I say, it's not what you think it's going to be. The thing I'm going to say is not the thing you think the guy from Google is going to say. And I say, answer the damn phone. Like, answer the damn phone. But then, further to that, and kind of connecting some dots around all of this, is the notion of, like, where did that phone call come from? Like, how did you get the phone call? And then are you measuring the phone call? And then are you listening to the phone calls to know that they are or aren't being actually answered? And what process or what communication is that person, receptionist, salesperson, etc., actually going through to make sure that none of those calls get lost? And that's, a huge piece of this business. And so I think the truth of the matter is that the things that work.
Oh, we lost him. Jason, Jason, why don't you jump in while Matt's frozen?
Yeah, I love it because Matt was kind of going where I was going. So we recently did what we called a CX, or a customer experience trend study, and we identified 35% of consumers asked a very specific question to a dealer and never got that answer. So think about that, how dysfunctional that is. And there's basics that we as an industry have to get back to. All the technology in the world, all the widgets and the doohickeys and the automatic dialers, if we're not in a position to use that technology to be able to immediately answer those questions, we're failing the consumer. And that's something that, I think about every single day. I use this term CX, which is pervasive in other industries, and we're starting to have that conversation within the auto space of the customer experience and using the technology and thinking through how do we answer the 35% of those consumers that ask a specific question. And when you don't deliver that answer, they're moving on to the 18 other sources that they're researching to find that car or to service that vehicle or to buy that part. So that's when I think about number of vendors, I think about what's the shiny object of the day. It's about, I go back to the point that April made of being introspective, using data to identify what those real problems are in that customer experience.
Thanks very much. Matt is back. Continue your thought, Matt.
I don't know where I was. Where was I when I froze? But no, I was really just saying that.
You said answer the phone. Answer the phone.
I did say that.
By the way, you can't say damn here.
I can.
Oh yeah, you
Pretty
can.
sure I'm going to say a
It's
lot
all
worse than
good.
that, so go ahead.
It's all good.
Yeah, right. So no, and then the other part of that, if it didn't get caught in the recording, was then measure those phone calls and see what people are saying when those phone calls happen, and then build a closed loop to get more phone calls, right? And that simple exercise, it sounds simple, there's a lot of connected dots, and there can be a lot of technology involved. There can be third-party call tracking, call recording, call auditing. There can be conversions built off of those phone calls and then piped back into bidding and buying platforms like Google Ads and others. But just taking that nugget of phone calls as the thing that leads to a dealership visit, and that I can get more of them, and that we can optimize them, and that we can tighten that process, I think is just super powerful and super relevant. It's something that every dealer can actually relate to, whether they're, they've been in the business for 50 years or just, took over a dealership. So I will put a pin in that.
Well, then what a great segue to go to April at the dealership level and comment on that.
So, it's funny, but everyone's talking about the customer experience, and it's something I've been talking about forever. I'm like, you have to answer the question. But most importantly, the biggest piece of advice I give people now is be the customer. That's to my general managers, the internet teams, every single person. Try to schedule an appointment. Try to buy a car. Try to do all the things that you want your customers to be able to do, but not just on your website, not just on the phone. Google search it. Give them terms to actually Google and see what happens, what path actually goes down that. But then here's the big one. Everyone thinks, okay, I've done that. Check mark, it's over. No. Because here's the real kicker to this whole thing. With all this technology, guess what? It breaks, and it breaks all the time. So what works today might actually not work at all tomorrow. So it's something that you have to do all the time. Google breaks my stuff on the daily. I love that you still call it Google My Business too, because I can't change the name to it. It's still like embedded in the head. But, they've changed my name. They've changed my phone number. Things happen all the time. They do an update on a CRM or a website, and suddenly links don't work anymore. So you pay all this money to get traffic to your website, and then everything just falls apart. So you have to look at it, but then look at it all the time and keep doing it.
Terrific. Wayland, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was going to add to that because April's absolutely right. Everything breaks. So what's also important is to have someone there who can constantly fix it. Like if you buy a little widget and it breaks and nobody's there to fix it, okay, that's not going to help you. Or if you do a big website optimization and nobody's watching what's going on when something changes, because it does. The industry changes. Your competitors do something different and they're all of a sudden beating you. Google makes an algorithm update. You're all of a sudden not driving as much traffic. Don't turn around and just go, well, why? It's not my fault. Like, you need an expert on your side that can kind of watch that for you and ride those waves with you, because there's too many areas now with too much complexity for anyone to do it on their own. So that's a great point there, April.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, April, you brought up about the update. I mean, those of you with Apple phones or Android phones, they do an update, something doesn't work. Of course, I got a Google phone now, so it works perfectly every time. Monica, could you weigh in on the all these solutions and what to do? Because you're kind of in between dealers and digital.
Yeah, totally. And I think it goes right back to the foundation, is the foundation working, and then building on top of that foundation. Exactly what April said is test your own stuff, test your own processes so you understand the gaps and the opportunities. A lot of us, we buy the technology and we're like, oh, hands off, it's working, we're good. We have all the technology that our competitors have and all the shiny stuff that was sold to us by vendors. It must be doing a great job. And then we don't go back and loop back to see if it's actually working for us. Is what kind of friction points have we created with this new technology? Because I can tell you, as April will tell you as well, is there will always be a friction point every time you implement a new technology, with the broken links, with the consumer, with the customer journey. Are we creating a problem by adding new technology? And generally, I think the answer is yes, because we're not thinking it through and we don't have a strong foundation that we're building this technology on. So again, being on kind of on the both sides, is we get excited when we meet these vendors and like, we can do this and your competitors aren't doing that and we can make this work, so you're going to get more traffic this way. And then you break it down and you see that you actually don't even need it, but it was really pretty and shiny that you wanted to sign it up and no one had it at the time. So again, always go back to your foundation. What is the blueprint of your marketing? Does it fit in? Is the foundation of your marketing strong, or is there a crack in there? Because most likely we do have a crack in that foundation, because we've never circled back to test it ourselves. We rely on our customers to tell us, this isn't working, I couldn't get a hold of you. Just like your experience, Jeff. It didn't work because they didn't test their own process. They had a crack in their foundation and they tried to layer all these technologies on it to fix that crack. So kind of just summarizing what everybody else has said, but that's exactly it.
Well, this particular dealer that I had this experience with, they got big because they treated people right. However, they're not the biggest dealer in the market area. The biggest dealer is still dealing with people, and they're not forgetting their systems, and they have people checking their systems. And it's a very good point. And Brooke, I can see you sitting there waiting, like, oh. What's your opinion?
So agree with everything that's been said. A couple of things I found have been really helpful with testing the system is that we get so consumed with looking at our website or looking at our CRM or insert whatever, is that we see the same thing over and over and over again. And it becomes, I'm going to maybe date myself a little bit here, but the 3D prints they had, I think they were big like in the 90s. And you'd see the same thing and you keep looking at it and maybe you got too close to, you couldn't see it anymore. So you'd have to step back, right? Get someone else to look at your website. Get someone else that's not in the auto industry. So maybe Kate, take your sister or your sibling or your spouse or a friend and say, you walk through the website and tell me, is it easy for you? Because maybe it was your baby and you're the one that did the whole website. So maybe it's that unconscious bias that, oh, it's perfect. No, it's not. I can say that because I've been there. I'm like, oh, I did the entire website at the dealership, and so I loved it. And so maybe you just have someone else go through the website. Have someone else go, like as April said, go through, but have someone else that's not in the car and just do it, because it gets them. That's how the consumer's seen it, and we see it through the eyes of a dealership and through automotive. So that's number one. Number two is that. So I can't remember, it was, I've been taking notes down here. Someone said, and I apologize, I don't know who it was, about is the technology real or not? Because there is for every great piece of technology out there, there's a piece of technology that's just a house of cards. So do your homework on that. Stay informed. And it becomes difficult at times because you wear so many hats. Going back to what I said earlier, I don't care what position you are, or if you're the CEO versus someone that turns out the lights at night, you still are wearing a lot of hats. So I just cannot stress enough how important it is to stay informed with what's going on. If it's, hey, Brooke, I just don't have time to listen to a podcast or go read an article, well, then have someone else that you trust. Hey, give me the bullet points, give me the cliff notes of what's going on in the world. Hey, get to one conference a year, do something so you know that, hey, this is the latest and greatest, because whether it's GA4 coming down the pike, like that's huge. It is massive how websites are being completely redone and recoded and rewritten on how things are being done. So I cannot stress how important it is. Everything is changing. Amazon advertising, like that is massive. Do people even understand, like, okay, I want to do it, great, but it will fail if you don't understand how it's done and how your process is, and that how it's tracked is different than Google Analytics. So all these things, there's some great things, even social media. Like that's a great tool. TikTok's great. All these things are great. But once again, just going out there and doing it, what's your process going to be? Just throwing something up there. Once again, it goes back to the process portion of it. So let me go back here. I think, yeah. So just all these little things they're great things that are going back to the foundation of what we can do with it, but going back to the process of how you're going to do it and staying informed. So all great comments have been made here. Everyone's right on what they're doing. That's why we're all on this awesome show right now. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Thanks. I have to add to your comment there. For every piece of technology, there's 10% of your staff that are bamboozled by it.
It's another red shiny object at a 20 group. It's like, oh, we got to have it. No, you don't. Go back in the corner and calm down. You don't need another technology. Just slow your roll there, buddy. No, you don't.
I hate 20 groups. Like every time somebody's there, I'm getting text messages from all of them, and they're all at different ones at different times. And I'm like, stop.
There needs to be like some forum to be like, okay, everyone, you're going to 20 group. All right, we need to have it's like an AA meeting, but like a 20 group AA meeting. But like, stop this shit right now. You don't need this shit. Calm down. No, you don't need this. Stop. Save your money. Hire someone that's going to tell you that you don't need this. Slow down. Take 10 seconds and breathe. You don't need this. Yes,
exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up because I talk to dealers every single day, have for years. And one of the things that I think they could fix right now is eliminate these ridiculous automated phone systems. Press 1 for this, press 6 for that, put 24
Your
for
business
this.
is important to us.
And then now they've gotten better. So it's like, okay, do you want to get into our voicemail directory? No, I don't. I want to talk to a person. Like, I mean, the amount of money they spend to try, it's ridiculous. And they lose people. This was a funny one from last week. I had a dealer principal who had an assistant. The assistant wasn't in the building. The assistant couldn't answer phone calls for the person she works for. And I was like, wow, fix that problem. But anyway, it was kind of funny. Anyway, we know it sounds simple, but how many platforms are a must-have for dealers in order to attract customers? Let's go with April on this because obviously a must-have with the 20 group AA meeting is probably
it's
a little
real
different.
Thing. I'm telling you, someone's got to market this.
What's a must-have this week, in your opinion, April?
I'm with you. I will be a founding member with you, Brooke.
Let's talk about it.
Yes. So I'm going to tell you that the biggest thing with, the strategy of what you must have actually is a store by store deal. And so again, it goes back to, you need to sit down with your whole store and figure out what kind of size of store, where are you at, what process is working. If you take something else on, do you even have the ability to actually implement it properly and go for it? But what I have found with all of our stores is it's different store by store. I have 2 stores that are in the same parking lot, and the strategy and the items that I must have in them are different. Some of them are driven by the OEM, where you must have this certain digital retailing tool. You must have this certain chat tool. You must have this certain amount of keywords, and they must go to these certain keywords. You must have. So the OEMs, the must-haves right now, start with what the OEM forces you to have. And they're different. They're all completely different. If I could have a whole podcast on fighting OEMs, I would, because this is probably the thing that lights my fire more than anything, because they don't understand the one fundamental thing, which is every store is different. So what works at one store doesn't work at another. So, Brooke's podcast is something I say all the time. I've been, for a decade, I've said facts, not feelings, because ultimately, if you go to your data, you figure out your broken spots, you find out what's working, you build upon it, that's going to be different store to store. Digital retailing is a buzzword. It is something when they started coming to me, I'm like, if somebody says this again, I'm going to ram my head through the wall. Because at the end of the day, all it is a way to, it's been around for over a decade. I've had digital retailing for 10 years, but it's not about selling a car A to Z. It's about the conversation. It's about trying to make sure you spend all this money to get into your website, that you have a spot that they can now self-explore on your website. That's what it's about. And we're just overcomplicating it with buzzwords. And now I'm going to get off a soapbox because I could go on for an hour about all of this, but ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a lot of great technology that's out there, but figuring out your people and your process, and then figure out little bits and pieces. Because like, Ian, you made a comment about the phones. I'm going to tell you, we don't have voicemail in our group. It's against the rules. We don't have voicemail.
Love it.
However, that actually can be hindersome if nobody answers the phone.
Exactly.
Right? So, you know, at the end of the day, we actually finally had to put in the press 1, press 2. As much as maybe you don't, you know, we don't like it. If the receptionist can't answer 3,000 calls at the same time, you have to at least get the phone calls parsed to the part of the building, right?
Understood.
So there's some of those things that are necessary evils that actually are there to be helpful. So you have to, again, figure out what your process is. If you get 3,000 phone calls a day versus 100 calls a day, it might look different. So look at what's going to work best for you. Talk to people who are in your area, who are like sized, not maybe like OEM, but even like size. You know, do they sell 100 cars a month or do they sell 500 cars a month? And then you can start to just spitball and have good conversation with other people. I've learned almost everything I know from other people in the industry. So ask questions from other people. Most people are willing to help you if you just ask.
Great. Yeah. I mean, the reason I brought that up is if I call five dealers in your area and one of them picks up the phone, the other ones don't, chance of me going there are pretty high. I'm not saying that voicemail, like with 1 or 2 is a problem, but it's with 20 different things that change every single time. Like it's craziness. And some of them don't even work, to your point. Jason,
or they don't call you back. Like
yeah.
That's like my biggest pet peeve is like, don't, you know, if you're gonna have a voicemail, like my rule always was, I don't leave without returning a call. Even if I don't have the answer, I'm gonna call you and say, look, I got your message. I'm working on it. I apologize that I don't have an answer, but you're not forgotten. All people want to know is that they were heard.
Well, the funny thing during the pandemic, and this was the first time this happened to me in 22 years of dealing in the industry, dealers actually called me back when they missed the call. It was the first time that ever happened to me. Oh, we missed the call. Can we help you? Because the business was down. So they're like, oh, we missed something. Yeah. Waylon, you had a thought. You're muted.
Yeah, I was really interested in what you're saying, April, because the question was, what platforms are vital? Like, what do you really need? Well, part of the problem with that question is that your OEM does demand you use specific platforms in a lot of cases. And I've run into this with a lot of dealerships where the platform that you have to use in order to get a co-op dollar reimbursement is actually not very good. It's not effective. It doesn't, like a lot of times what I see with the platform choices that you're given or dealers are given is they don't understand how Google works today. They don't understand how a good paid search campaign should be run anymore. And so they give you this like cookie cutter thing that's supposed to work for everybody, and it's terrible. And it's really behind the times. And that's unfortunate for dealers, because in this digital market, you're not only competing with other dealerships anymore, you're competing with car gurus and Carvana and all these other people who are grabbing eyeballs left and right nationally with huge websites, enterprise level data-driven technology, because that's what I do. So I know exactly what they're doing, and they're just beating the crap out of dealerships all the time. And that because the dealer doesn't have a choice around the platform. So what are you going to do? You have to get away from co-op dollars. That's a hard thing to do, but in some cases you may, in order to get the right platform.
Thanks for that.
If I could make a comment there, we're starting to suffer from the things that we used to make customers suffer from in the past. We would tell them about, variable valve technology and all these things in vehicles, and they'd look at us, and here we go, enterprise solutions, etc. And decisions seem to be made by people who don't know anything about it, and that's right to the OEM level as well.
Tell us what you really think about the OEM, Mr. Jeff. But Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, just one piece, and we talk about this mythological creature of the electric vehicle, right? And there's been a lot of buzz and conversations about it's coming, and it's going to continue to be a slow evolution, in my opinion here. The next couple of years, you need the cars. It's great for manufacturers to push down kind of thought leadership, best practice content of why an EV is so great. But something for us to think about as dealers, as those vehicles start rolling to the lots and the allocations are a higher percent with EVs, of how are we as retailers thinking through re-educating consumers? How are we engaging with the consumer? And listen, the OEM piece, I get it. There's always going to be that conflict. But as retailers, how do we embrace this evolution and change in our industry to use the tools to educate the consumer, to get them to buy a vehicle from us as opposed to somebody down the street, or potentially directly from a manufacturer, heaven forbid, right? So something for those listeners to think about is, I've just the conversation here, talking through, I've had a lot of conversations with folks about EV, that we're going to be slowly getting into the realities of, not the hypothetical, and how do we use communication tools? How do we use platforms to not only educate the consumer, but our own team members as well, the old employees of our dealerships.
Cool. Matthew?
Again, we need a day. Can we organize a day? Let's have an event. Yeah. Let's all go to Vancouver. Let's make this happen. But I think we use a phrase internally, which I think is relevant, but also hard to operationalize in a dealership or in an auto group context. But the phrase is simply, if you're not testing, you're resting, right? It's if you're just accepting, and I think the phrase was used in the chat there, the status quo, if you're just assuming that everything is right, that everything is working, that the phone numbers are consistent between your Google business profile and your website and other profiles, then there's a good chance that those things are actually broken somewhere. Two quick stories that I feel are super relevant and useful. Again, one not so sexy, but super interesting, was I got an email from an auto group a few weeks ago, and they wanted to run a test on one of their websites to see if the phraseology, the words, used vehicles versus pre-owned vehicles generated more website traffic. Right, if they rejigged the structure and the header text and all of the SEO stuff that they would need to do to make that work, is the phrase they should be using, used vehicles or pre-owned vehicles. And I said, that's a really interesting question. I was super excited, and the answer was also super simple. We very quickly we looked at both an internal tool and we looked at Google Trends, and used car by far exceeds pre-owned. But the consumer, again, when you look at that consumer lens, people don't use the phrase pre-owned unless they're talking DVDs or clothing. So if you want that traffic, if you want to organically, and then even, when you're talking about it in paid search and what keywords you might be bidding on for that, just that simple exercise of how does the consumer do it, super powerful and super important. The other one, which was super interesting and we're still working through a little bit, is a different auto group reached out, and they were talking about a form that they were being forced to use by the OEM that was mandating a particular piece of technology. And they were, given co-op dollars to market this particular service or feature, and they can't actually collect conversion data off of it. Like, they can't actually get they know if someone fills out the form because they eventually get a lead maybe 5 or 12 hours later, but they can't actually optimize against it in their own campaigns. And they were pleading with us, can you help us? Can we talk to the OEM? Can we figure out who's responsible for this? I'm like, this is not gonna be an easy journey, but sure, let's do this. Let's try and set up those conversations to figure out how we don't hamstring you in your digital marketing efforts. But then to roll back and answer your original question again, what are the things that you must be doing? I think number one is, you've got to have the website, to have the Google Analytics, to do all of the other things. And I think we again, it does fall into this, either the checklist or the checkbox or the mandates from OEMs to dealers. It's like, well, I have a website, mission accomplished. Let's move on. Let's move on. And so people aren't thinking about, well, what content should we be having there? How fast are those pages loading? What is it like when I try to use the phone number that's posted on my website? Are my hours still accurate from when I first got this website under 5 years ago? Oh, it turns out no. And so it's all of those little things that just destroy a business and destroy a reputation in an ecosystem where loyalty is already fleeting, right? Already scarce as a currency, and that consumers are, especially in a climate where I just need a vehicle and there aren't vehicles to buy. The simple exercise of getting those things wrong is enough to dissuade anyone from ever doing business with you.
Silence. Ian.
Brooke?
Yeah, so as always, agree with everything that's been said. Shocker, I know. We have great people on this call today, as always. So a couple things I wrote down here is, I'm not going to say the DR word because it is a freaking buzzword. And at the end of the day, what it needs to be is connected retailing, is because it needs to connect not just the sales portion, but the service portion. Is that great? You bought a car, fantastic. What happens when they come into service? Well, you bought a vehicle service contract? Shit, I didn't know that. I can't even see it. What? I mean, so there's all these things that aren't even talking to each other. So when you say, what are the most important things? Yes, the OEM. I mean, I've lost count of how many dealers are forced to have XYZ product from the OEM and it's crap. So they buy an additional thing that's the exact same thing that they want and then hide it in the script at the bottom of the page or whatever, just because they have to have it. So now you have two of the same items. Then nothing talks to each other. So you have all these products that you feel are the absolute, I have to have these things, but then none of it talks to each other. So all these things that we have to have, nothing talks to each other, and it just, okay, let's rewind here for a second. Then I have other customers, or I've seen this, obviously we've all been in the industry for a while, that we have these awesome products that are the must-have, the CRMs. Okay, great. If it's so freaking important and it's a must-have, why are you not using it? Why are you not utilizing it? You use what, that much of your CRM? Just get a freaking Excel because you're not using it. The website, those websites go back to 1990, go back to 1980. We were doing just fine with Rolodexes, but now you have all this technology that is the absolute staple. We have to have it. We have auto alerts. We have all these different things, but we're not even using it. And we're just going to wait for the customer to come in the door. Then why even have all these products? So that was one of the things someone mentioned. EV. That's a whole. If you can become the expert and everything, everyone come to you and the authority on that, man. I don't know that people understand how fruitful that will become for you. Why are if someone buys an EV from you, why are you not having the charger in house? Why are you not saying, hey, I can send John Smith or Mary or Susie to go help install that charger in house for you? Why are you outsourcing that? And there's all the EV portion of it. I mean, once again, having those must-haves, the EV portion should be a must-have for your store. We can go have a whole section on that. I know you did a whole EV section or a show on this, but that's a whole other portion. Having the customer, when it comes to the customer, of all these different things that, not talking to each other, the customer doesn't care that you understand them. And then you have to understand that the customer wants to be understood. That's what the customer cares about. They don't care that you're shoving facts down them. They could care less. The customer wants to feel understood. So all of these different products, they're not talking to each other. The service and sales, we have 17 different, not really, but we have probably a CRM for service, a CRM for sales, a DMS. I've seen stores that have 2 different DMSs. You've got these texting. All these different things don't talk to each other. So, and then OEMs that are forcing stuff. We all know this. And then we're having duplicate things and nothing talks to each other. So at the end of the day, who's winning, who's losing? Usually the customer is going to lose, and a lot of times the dealer is losing. So it's really tough to say what is the must-haves. And even if they are must-haves, how much of the stuff of the must-haves are we even utilizing?
Thanks for that. Monica?
Well, that's a hard one to be last on because everything has actually been said. But just to touch on what Brooke is saying, is she's absolutely right. I mean, she's nailed she's nailed the, oh my God, I'm losing words right now, but she's nailed it essentially. Because that's exactly what happens, right? And I'm gonna leave it at that. I won't reiterate everyone's comments.
No problem, Jeff. One last question. I guess we have time for one last question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, you know something,
oh
my gosh, it's there's so much here, and one of my favorite things we talk about is, and everybody's mentioned, is the people who go and actually make the decisions of things don't use them. And we talk about the CRMs, and that's something that's such a big deal because somebody says, I bought this at my 20 group meeting and it works great. And then they go on to do their thing. I'm not going to say they're golfing. I'm just saying they go on to do their thing, and in walks the people. And I've been there too many times. You'll all laugh at this. They're all wearing an Oxford button-up shirt with khaki pants. And they use the word algorithm, and all the staff just go, you know, and then somebody gets mad 2 months later, why aren't you using it? But where does the buck stop with making things work? We don't have a lot of time, so quick comment from everybody. And we will go to Wayland, who's probably been the person who hasn't said anything the longest.
That's a great question. And I've seen this up and down in, enterprise companies, huge companies, all the way down to dealerships and small businesses. Where does the buck stop? Well, everybody's talked about it. Like if you pick a tool and you're the management, you say this tool is supposed to achieve these kind of results, then you have to follow through with how does implementation work? Every single level of implementation has to be figured out, talked about, and then all of the stakeholders, from the first person who picks up the phone to the person who does the analytics at the end of the day, seeing whether or not this works, understands their job and their role, and there's some accountability at every single level. Otherwise, implementation is useless if you have no adoption. And that's a really, really big deal, and that's some of the things that we deal with all the time is that I can help our customers bring in a lot more traffic to the website. But if they don't know how that gets tracked from the point that someone gets to the site, into the CRM, and then down to the sales floor, and somewhere along the line, all that gets lost, then your implementation is not good and your adoption is broken. And maybe even your technology isn't even complete enough and you don't know it. And then you've invested all this money and time, and it's not really clear what's really going on. So, that where's the buck stop? It really stops on all levels, right? Everybody has to be involved, but management has to know it's not just a top-down decision. It's a bottom-up and top-down, and everybody needs to agree to it and then do it together.
No, that's a terrific point. And April, I'm going to call on you in this because I do have a suggestion for you. If you use this and the higher ups bring it in, and I want a referral fee. But how about for the 20 groups, they take a service writer, a salesperson, a receptionist with them? Wouldn't that be interesting? So where does the buck stop at? Where does the buck stop at Horn Auto Group, April?
Well, ultimately it always lands back with the general manager, right? They're the ones that make the decisions. They're the one that say yes. They're the one that sign the check. They're the one that, has to be, and then obviously with us, we have a group. So the group, the buck stops there as well. But ultimately the buck stops where our paycheck stops. So if you don't have a buy-in from every single person, like Wayland said, and everybody's rowing in the same direction, and everybody says, yeah, you know what, that'll work for us, then it won't work. Because it doesn't matter if I tell you to do something, if I haven't convinced you of the why, then it will not work. The other big mistake I see dealers make is that we do buy the shiny new toy because the vendor did a good job telling us how it's going to solve all of our problems. But then when it doesn't, we just keep signing the check. And that's the one thing I've never understood is why we don't cancel things that aren't working. So once you've taken the time, now that can't be done in 30 days. I have a bare bones minimum. We don't do anything less than 90 days. We vet things very, very, very long. I mean, Wayland knows we've been working on stuff for months and months and months, and it may be another months and months before we get there, but we're slow and methodical before we put something in. But then once something's in, we're going to look at it for at least 90 days. But then I'm the first one to say, rip that Band-Aid off. If it's not working, get rid of it. So don't be afraid to cancel things is my last piece of advice.
Thank you very much. Jason.
And most most productive organizations, businesses, it's they're empowering people to test and learn. I think somebody made the comment here, if you're not testing, you're resting. Matt, I think that was you. But if you're an organization that doesn't empower your people to test and learn and to scrape the knees and then make the decisions and recommendations up, then you're failing, right? And I see dealers, it's hard, right? Because usually it's the GM, the GSM, it's the obviously the dealer principal. They have all the years experience. You know, the green pea salesperson or the service writer or BDC person, they don't have the experience. So how do they know? But if we're in an organization that empowers those frontline folks to actually raise their hand and test and learn and elevate it, that's fodder for phenomenal success. So the buck stops ideally with those frontline people, the bottom, for them to be able to manage up. And if you don't have that confidence in your organization to do that, then you're not running a functional organization. So just something to think about for the listeners that are kind of listening to all these great practices. Empowerment is so important.
Great, thank you so much, Matt.
So, hi. So I think one of the core tenets, we've talked a lot, or people have talked a lot over the last 2 years about the notion of digital transformation. Again, it was in the chat here. And I think, that has not been realized, on Motive in any way, shape, or form yet. One of the core tenets of, digitizing a business and transforming a business is really, democratizing data. And what does that really mean? It means sharing the operational data from all, components of the business so that everyone can kind of see it. And that way, collectively, you're starting to make decisions based on, you both change your own behavior to move those metrics because you know what they are, and you start to make decisions based on what's working and what's not. And so, and I have this kind of vision or this plan to build a bit of a narrative around this over the next few months. So this is spoiler alert, this is all new material. But having a public on a screen dashboard that everyone walks by every day to see the operational pieces of a dealership around, these are our leads, our sales, and our ROs. These are our website visits, our clicks, and our engagements. These are, so understand that whatever you are doing in the dealership, you are having an influence over these things. And then you can start to make more informed decisions, or there will now be, instead of the marketing manager standing up and speaking to the GM and saying, this, bullshit lead tool you got at your last 20 group, it doesn't work. It becomes visible to everyone. And so but it does require this openness of data sharing, which means, the marketing team needs to share their analytics data and results data with, sales and management and sales need to share their sales and RO data with marketing. And it sounds like, I didn't know until recently that we had to have this conversation, but I've found out more and more that even the people within a single business, within a single storefront, are not sharing this data. And in an auto group, I think it's just compounded, right? That the marketing people have to struggle or fight or argue for why they should be able to see the sales data. It's kind of hilarious. But again, if we can't measure this stuff, we can't make informed decisions. And so it does become, as I like to say, the crazy Ivan, right? It's a Hunt for Red October reference. You don't know if you're going to go left or right at the end of the hour. You don't know if you're firing this agency and hiring a new one. You don't know if you're canceling this contract. And I still think we're dealing with a bit of a lagging phenomena from the early days of COVID, where so many operations canceled their BDC deals or canceled and got rid of their CRMs. And we haven't recovered for that, because no one's needed those things. The cars keep selling themselves, quote unquote. And so a lot of the things that would otherwise help us future-proof the business and be good for the consumer have all but evaporated from the ecosystem. And we need to get back there. Otherwise, we're going to lose. We're going to continue again in this environment of waning loyalty. We're going to lose market share, and things are going to be different in 10, 15, 20 years for everyone. So,
well, in my best Sean Connery, I must say that the reference to the crazy Ivan was superb. Monica, your thoughts on where does the buck stop?
I think that's saying where the buck stop has to be a little bit broader. You have to look at a full 360-degree review from every department, giving us feedback on how they're interacting with that new technology, and then taking all of that data again back to Matthew's point is looking at the data. Why are we not looking at the data from every department to see how it's affecting us? How is this technology unfolding, and is it actually hindering us or is it helping us? And I think once you have the key partners who are using the technology, getting their feedback, welcoming their feedback, then we can make a bigger decisions on where does the buck stop. Because generally, again, back to April's point, is the GM is making these decisions, but necessarily isn't using these technologies, isn't using these platforms. They're getting wowed by the vendor, like, oh my goodness, if my dealer could perform like this and could function like this and this process in place, we're going to see exponential sales return, which necessarily isn't the case. That isn't the outcome of these technologies. So I think when we look at it and start talking to every person who's encountering this interaction, this technology, we can get a better viewpoint of, is it working? And it's not having the buck stop at one person. It's, hey, let's collaboratively decide, is this functioning for us? Let's collaboratively decide if we need to move forward with this technology after 90 days, or this is something that we were oversold on.
That's a terrific point. You know, well, we always talk about where the buck stop is one person, and it's a great point that actually it isn't one person, and when it is when it fails. And final person on the comment, and to close the guest portion of the show out is Brooke Furnish. Brooke.
I had no Sean Connery impression, so I'm sorry to let you all down. Sorry about that. Can't do one, sorry. I got Brooke's impression and Brookish, that's about it. So I go back to facts, not feelings. At the end of the day, it is going to be based on facts, and whether that's going to go to data, that's going to go to what is the data saying. So you're not going to go, well, I think it's not working. You think, like, what does that mean? So if you've done your homework to begin with to say, do we actually need this tool? Do we need this software? Do we need this shiny object? Well, you think you do. That's great. You think you do. I think I need $1,000, but I really need $1 million. Well, why do you need $1 million? Well, here are the reasons why I do. Well, let me show you the reasons why I do. So going back to the reasons and the factual, and what Monica said is it's checking, when you do your research and you have the data of why you need this, whatever insert, whatever tool, whatever it is here, whether that's people, product, or process, whatever it is, here's the data why. You've done your research beforehand. April said it well, that you do the methodical, this X, Y, Z, da, da, da. Then once it's in place, it's not a set it and forget it. And I think too often once we have that awesome, best things in sliced bread, whatever it is, great. Now, if you just leave it on the shelf and let it collect dust, then why the hell did you get it? No, then it's trained, it's retrained, you implement it, you done all this stuff, and then constantly checking in to say, okay, all right, so it was really, really great, but because of all the different algorithms, because of all these new updates, because of Facebook changes, it has more freaking quick changes than a magician, what's happening now? Okay, now we've done this. Okay, so now we need to tweak it a little bit, but constantly checking in to say, okay, is this still working? Are we still in the trajectory where it's going? Maybe they were great at the time, but they got king of the mountain and they got lazy. Now another product has taken its place. But if we're not constantly checking in and saying, well, it was good then and we're just going to let it go, you've got to constantly keep checking in and saying, what is the data saying now? What are the facts saying now? Well, I felt really good when I got it and I'm sure it's good now. Really? What is the data saying? Facts over feelings, bottom line.
Thanks very much. And we're out of time. So final thought, Jeff. From Sean Connery.
Well, thank you, everybody. We had a big group of guests today and tremendous information. And would have been nice if everybody could have spoken a little bit more. But Matt, I've got to tell you, I think Ian and I are going to talk about having a show just on the must-have platforms. And I think we have to have a buck stop show. And if you guys are interested in joining us, any of us, just let us know. And thank you so much. It's always fun to have you. Good to see you, everybody. Thank you, Ian.
And we are looking for show ideas for next year and new show sponsors. So if anyone has ideas, definitely happy to hear. And have yourself a great week. We're out.
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show. And follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.